I want to make you my special assistant. My name is Dentonton, Owen swore. I was 41 and had been grinding through 12-hour days at Apex Logistics Group for 7 years. Senior Operations Analyst, Division 3. I kept the numbers clean, the processes running, and my mouth shut. That was the deal. But sitting in, Cassandra Vale Bonnet. Its glass office that Tuesday morning, staring at her predatory smile. I knew something had shifted. She leaned back in her executive chair, fingers drumming against the mahogany desk like she was playing a private game, only she understood. It comes with extra duties, she continued, her voice dropping an octave. Discretion. Loyalty. You know what I mean? I kept my face neutral. 7 years of corporate survival had taught me to read between the lines. But this wasn't subtle. This was a proposition wrapped in corporate speak, delivered by a woman who thought her corner office gave her the right to treat employees like personal accessories. Cassandra had been promoted to Vice President of Business Strategy 6 months earlier. Fresh blood, they called it. Dynamic leadership. She was 38, sharp as a razor, and had climbed the ladder faster than anyone in company history. The board loved her quarterly projections. The shareholders loved her cost-cutting initiatives. But I had started noticing things. The way she lingered near my desk during morning rounds. How she scheduled our quarterly reviews at upscale restaurants instead of the conference room. Last month, she'd invited me to a weekend leadership retreat in Boulder, Bamutfulpa. When I declined, citing family obligations, she'd given me a look that could freeze water. Think about it, Owen, she said now, standing and smoothing her skirt. Opportunities like this don't come around often, especially for someone at your level. The pause before level was deliberate, a reminder that I was disposable, replaceable, just another middle management drone who should feel grateful for her attention. I stood up, straightening my tie. I appreciate the offer, but I'll have to decline. Her smile faltered for just a second. Excuse me. I'm here to work, I said. Not for whatever this is. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the polished executive mask slipped completely. What I saw underneath was raw entitlement mixed with shock. Nobody had ever said no to her before. I see, she said slowly. Well, Owen, maybe you should think carefully about your priorities. This company values team players, ambitious people who understand how business really works. I nodded once and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, she spoke again. Real men know how to seize opportunities. I didn't turn around. I just walked out, closed the door behind me, and went back to my desk. But something cold had settled in my stomach. This wasn't over. I'd built my career on precision and reliability. While other guys played office politics or chased promotions through schmoozing, I focused on results. Clean reports, accurate forecasts, zero drama. That approach had served me well at Apex Logistics Group, a mid-sized logistics company that handled freight distribution across the boardwalk Midwest. I started as a junior analyst fresh out of college, worked my way up through merit, earned respect by being the guy who could solve problems without creating new ones. My ex-wife, Lauren Four, used to joke that I was married to spreadsheets instead of her. Maybe she was right. After our divorce 3 years ago, work became even more central to my life. My daughter, Emma, lived with her mother in Colorado Springs, and our weekend visits were the highlight of my week. Everything else revolved around maintaining the stability that supported those moments. The warning signs with Cassandra had been subtle at first. Too subtle. It started with comments during team meetings. Owen always has such insightful perspectives, she'd say, letting her hand rest on my shoulder just a beat too long. When I presented quarterly efficiency reports, she'd sit closer than necessary, her perfume mixing with the recycled air in the conference room. Then came the invitations. Coffee meetings that felt more like dates. A company dinner where she seated me next to her and spent the evening talking about her personal life instead of business strategy. Last month, she'd suggested we attend a trade conference in Kansas City phone together. When I mentioned that my colleague, Trevor, usually handled those events, she said Trevor lacked my special touch. I'd started documenting things without really thinking about it. Professional paranoia, maybe. Screenshots of text messages that arrived after business hours. Emails with unusual subject lines. Meeting invitations that seemed unnecessarily personal. My gut had been sending signals for weeks, but I'd pushed them aside. Cassandra was ambitious and aggressive, sure, but she was also successful. I assumed her behavior was just misguided networking or poor boundary management. Corporate environments could be weird that way, but yesterday changed everything. She'd called me into her office to discuss the Jefferson account. Normal enough, except when I arrived, she was wearing a dress that belonged in a nightclub, not a boardroom. The conversation kept drifting away from logistics toward personal topics. Her vacation plans, my weekend activities, whether I was seeing anyone. "You know, Owen," she'd said, leaning forward across her desk. "Successful partnerships require trust, intimacy, understanding what each other really needs." I'd redirected the conversation back to shipping schedules and left as quickly as possible. Now, sitting at my desk after declining her special assistant offer, I realized I'd been naive. This wasn't about career advancement or professional development. This was about power and control, dressed up in corporate language. I opened my secure email folder and started reviewing the evidence I'd unconsciously been collecting. The pattern was clearer now, and more disturbing than I'd imagined. The termination letter arrived 90 minutes later. I was reviewing freight manifests when human resources knocked on my cubicle wall. Miranda, from HR, looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as she handed me the envelope. "Effective immediately," the letter read. "Due to insubordination and failure to align with company values, your employment with Apex Logistics Group is terminated. Please gather your personal belongings and report to security for escort from the premises." I read it twice, then looked up at Miranda. She was wringing her hands like she'd been ordered to execute a puppy. "This is a mistake," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Owen. It came from executive level. I don't have any details." 5 minutes later, security was standing beside my desk. 2 guards I'd seen 100 times in the lobby, now treating me like a criminal. Other employees watched from their workstations, whispering behind hands and computer monitors. I packed my few personal items, a coffee mug, a photo of Emma, my backup phone charger. While one guard observed, the other filled out paperwork. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. As they escorted me through the lobby, I saw Cassandra standing near the elevator bank. She was talking to another executive, but her eyes were fixed on me. When our gazes met, she smiled. Not friendly. Triumphant. "Real men know how to seize opportunities," she'd said. Now I understood what she meant. This was punishment for not playing her game. A demonstration of power. Submit or be destroyed. I didn't react, didn't argue or make a scene. I just kept walking until I reached the parking garage, climbed into my Honda, and sat there for 5 minutes, letting reality settle. 7 years of steady employment. Gone. My reputation in the industry, potentially damaged. My ability to support my daughter, compromised. All because I'd refused to become some executive's personal plaything. But as I drove home through Denver traffic, something shifted inside me. The initial shock was fading, replaced by something colder and more focused. Cassandra had made a mistake. She'd assumed I was weak, disposable, someone who would slink away quietly and disappear. She was wrong. I'd been documenting her behavior for months without even realizing it. Screenshots, email threads, meeting summaries, voice recordings from my phone that I'd meant to delete, but never got around to cleaning up. Professional habits had turned into an accidental insurance policy. When I got home, I went straight to my home office and opened my encrypted backup drive. Everything was there. Dates, times, witnesses, a pattern of inappropriate behavior that would make any HR department break into a cold sweat. I poured myself a beer, opened my laptop, and started organizing the evidence into a timeline. Cassandra wanted to play power games? Fine, but she'd chosen the wrong target. I was about to show her what real precision looked like. I spent the weekend building my case like I was preparing a quarterly report. Methodical, thorough, no emotion, just facts. By Sunday night, I'd compiled 6 months of documentation, 37 inappropriate text messages, 14 emails with suggestive language disguised as business communication, audio recordings from 3 meetings where Cassandra made comments that would make any employment lawyer salivate. The most damning piece was a voice memo from last month. She'd called me at home on a Friday evening, ostensibly about the Patterson contract. But 15 minutes into the conversation, after what sounded like her second glass of wine, she'd gotten explicit about her expectations for our working relationship. "I look after people who look after me, Owen," she'd said, her words slightly slurred. "Career advancement, salary bumps, special projects that look great on a resume. All it takes is understanding what I really need from you." I'd kept the recording because something in her tone had triggered my paranoia. Now, I was grateful for that instinct. Monday morning, I called Apex Logistics Group's employee hotline and requested a meeting with the compliance department. They scheduled me for Wednesday afternoon with Vanessa Cole, the senior compliance officer. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a folder thick enough to choke a horse. Vanessa was professional, but guarded. Companies hated wrongful termination claims, especially ones involving sexual harassment allegations. "I understand you have concerns about your recent termination," she said, settling behind her desk. "More than concerns," I replied, sliding the folder across to her. "I have evidence." For the next hour, I walked her through the timeline, the escalating inappropriate behavior, the quid pro quo implications, the retaliation firing when I refused her advances. Vanessa took notes, asked clarifying questions, and maintained the neutral expression that HR professionals perfected in law school. But I caught her wincing when I played the audio recording where Cassandra described what she expected from her special assistants. "This is extensive," Vanessa said finally. "I'll need to review everything with legal counsel. We'll be in touch within the week." I left feeling cautiously optimistic. The evidence was solid. The company would have to take action. 3 days later, Vanessa called with an update that made my blood pressure spike. "After reviewing your materials, we've determined that your termination was justified based on performance issues predating the events you've described," she said, in a carefully rehearsed monotone. "While we appreciate your concerns about Ms. Vale's management style, we found no evidence of policy violations." "Management style?" I repeated. "Did you listen to the recordings?" "We conducted a thorough investigation. Ms. Vale categorically denied your allegations and provided documentation showing a pattern of insubordination and attitude problems. Several colleagues confirmed you'd been resistant to feedback and difficult to work with." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "What colleagues?" "I can't share specific details, but the consensus was clear. Your termination stands." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the wall. Cassandra hadn't just fired me. She'd built a paper trail to justify it. Fabricated performance issues, turned my coworkers against me. How many people had she compromised? How deep did this go? I called. Trevor Nabwan, my former cubicle neighbor, thinking he might provide some insight. We'd worked together for 4 years. He owed me at least honesty. Look, man, Trevor said, his voice strained. I can't really talk about this. Company policy, you know? But maybe you should just move on. Find something new. Starting fresh might be better for everyone. Trevor, what did she tell you? Long pause. Just that you'd been having problems, attitude issues, that you made some inappropriate comments about female employees. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, pieces clicking into place. Cassandra hadn't just retaliated against me. She'd poisoned the well. Made sure that even if I fought back, nobody would believe me. Smart. Ruthless. Exactly what I should have expected from someone who'd climbed to VP level by 38. But she'd made one mistake. She assumed I'd give up, that I was just another middle management drone who'd slink away quietly rather than risk making waves. She didn't know me as well as she thought. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called a private investigator. Silas Bennett ran a small firm that specialized in corporate investigations, divorce cases, insurance fraud, employment disputes. His website promised discretion and results. I need to know who I'm really dealing with, I told him, during our initial consultation at a downtown coffee shop. This woman destroyed my career in one afternoon. I want to understand how. Silas was a former detective, mid-50s, with the patient demeanor of someone who'd heard every possible variation of human betrayal. He quoted me a fee that made me wince, but I paid it. This was about more than getting my job back. This was about understanding the scope of what I was facing. Give me 2 weeks, he said. I'll see what I can dig up. While Silas worked his angles, I started my own investigation. Late-night Google searches, LinkedIn deep dives, public records requests. What I found disturbed me more than Cassandra's original proposition. She hadn't been at Apex Logistics Group very long, but her rise had been meteoric. Hired as a senior manager 18 months ago, promoted to director after 6 months. Then VP 6 months after that. Each promotion coincided with the sudden departure of potential rivals. Marcus Reed, former director of strategic planning, left for personal reasons right before Cassandra's first promotion. According to his LinkedIn, he was now working for a smaller firm in Albuquerque, at a significant pay cut. Sophia Nguyen, front-runner for the VP position, resigned to pursue other opportunities 2 weeks before Cassandra was selected. She was currently unemployed. Ethan Walsh, senior analyst with 12 years at the company, was terminated for performance issues 3 months ago. His employment gap was still ongoing. The pattern was clear. Cassandra eliminated competition by destroying careers. But the real revelation came when Silas called with his preliminary findings. Your boss has been busy, he said. 3 previous employers. Similar pattern each time. Rapid advancement followed by a trail of employment disputes and NDAs. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, sealed settlements. I count at least 6 in the past 10 years. Always involving male employees. Always involving wrongful termination claims that got buried under legal paperwork. Silas had identified 2 former victims willing to talk off the record. Both told similar stories. Inappropriate advances, promises of career advancement in exchange for personal favors, retaliation when they refused. The scary part, Silas continued, is how good she is at covering her tracks. She builds performance issues into their files months before making her move, creates paper trails that justify the terminations, By the time anyone realizes what happened, the legal framework is already in place. How is she getting away with this? Money, power, smart lawyers, and companies that'd rather pay settlement fees than deal with public scandals. She picks her targets carefully. Middle management guys with families and mortgages. People who can't afford lengthy legal battles. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, processing the scope of Cassandra's operation. This wasn't just harassment. This was a systematic predator who used corporate structures to hunt and destroy careers. How many men had she victimized? How many families had been damaged? And why was she so confident she could keep getting away with it? The answer came to me as I was drifting off to sleep. She was getting away with it because her victim stayed silent, because fighting back seemed impossible, because the system was designed to protect people like her. But systems could be changed, patterns could be exposed, and predators could be stopped. I just needed to be smarter than everyone who'd tried before me. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. First, I called Marcus Reed in Albuquerque. It took some persuasion, but he agreed to meet for coffee. His story confirmed everything Silas had uncovered: inappropriate advances, fabricated performance issues, a termination that destroyed his career trajectory. "She ruins lives for sport," Marcus said, stirring his coffee with shaking hands. I tried to fight it, spent 15 grand on lawyers, got nowhere. The company had documentation going back months, showing I was a problem employee. All fake, but legally bulletproof. "What if we work together?" I asked, pushing our evidence toward him. He shook his head immediately. "I signed an NDA as part of my settlement. I can't be involved in anything official." He paused, sliding a flash drive across the table. "But if someone else happened to discover certain information, I can't stop you from finding things on your own." The second call was to Sophia Nguyen. She was more cautious than Free Marcus Ebalndorsik, but agreed to an anonymous phone conversation. Her experience was identical: advances, threats, character assassination, career destruction. "She's protected," Sophia told me. "Board connections, legal resources, and she's smart enough to only target people who can't fight back effectively." What if we could change that equation? How? By making the cost of protecting her higher than the cost of exposing her. The third call was to a journalist named Isabella Rossi, who covered corporate misconduct for the Denver Chronicle. I'd read her investigative pieces on employment discrimination and wage theft. She specialized in stories that embarrassed powerful people. "Serial sexual harassment with corporate cover-up," Isabella said when I outlined the situation. "That's exactly the kind of story we pursue, but I need multiple sources and bulletproof documentation. I can provide both. Anonymous sources won't be enough. I need people willing to go on the record. Give me 2 weeks." That afternoon, I started building a coalition. Silas had identified 8 potential victims across Cassandra's employment history. Some were bound by NDAs, but others weren't. Some were afraid, but others were angry enough to take the risk. The breakthrough came when I contacted Nathaniel Rhodes, a former firm PM, Apex Logistics Etra, employee terminated 6 months before my arrival. Cassandra had been a manager then, not yet VP, and she'd overplayed her hand. I documented everything, Nathaniel told me during a secure call. Recordings, emails, witnesses. I planned to sue, but my lawyer said the company would bankrupt me in legal fees. What if cost wasn't an issue? Meaning? I'm assembling a group, multiple victims, coordinated response, media attention, the kind of pressure that makes companies cut losses instead of fighting. Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. "You really think we can take her down?" I think we can make staying silent more expensive than speaking up. By week's end, I had 4 men willing to go on record. Marcus. Couldn't participate officially, but provided background evidence. Sophia. Agreed to serve as an anonymous source. Sila Istoria. Uncovered financial irregularities in Cassandra's expense reports, suggesting tax fraud. I'd also pinpointed Cassandra's weakness. She preyed on isolated targets, but had never faced coordinated resistance. Isabella agreed to run the story. Her editor approved a 3-part investigative series, publishing consecutively to maximize pressure. This will get ugly, Isabella warned. She'll attack your credibility. Are you prepared? I thought of Emma, of the careers Cassandra had ruined, of future victims we might save. Let her try. I've got nothing left to lose. Tertirot, Denver Chronicle. Published Part 1 on Tuesday. Corporate Predator, How a Rising Executive Weaponized Power. Isabella's piece featured 4 on-record victims, evidence spanning 3 companies, and proof of corporate complicity. By noon, the story trended nationwide. By 2 p.m., Apex Logistics. Stock plunged 12%. Wednesday's follow-up was brutal. The cover-up, How Companies Enable Workplace Predators. This exposed fabricated performance reviews, NDAs, and victim silencing tactics. By afternoon, Cassandra's LinkedIn vanished. Thursday, Apex placed her on administrative leave. Friday's finale cut deepest. Breaking the silence, victims speak out. Personal interviews detailed shattered careers. Mid-morning, Isabella texted. Emergency board meeting called. Termination imminent. Sunday afternoon, Apex issued a terse press release. Following comprehensive review, Cassandra Vale has been terminated for violating corporate conduct policies. We are committed to a safe, professional workplace. No apologies, no accountability. But it was enough. That evening, Silas Kantoatotum called. 2 of her past employers just reopened old cases. Legal analysts call this a liability tsunami. I poured a beer and stepped onto my Denver apartment balcony. The city lights flickered below. For the first time in months, I breathed freely. 3 weeks later, Summit Solutions Inc., a logistics firm in Fort Collins, offered me a senior analyst role. We need someone with your integrity, the hiring manager said. Someone who understands ethical documentation. The salary was 40% higher than Apex's. The benefits included ironclad whistleblower protections. I accepted immediately. On my last unemployed weekend, I drove to Colorado Springs to see Emma. She waited on the porch, backpack slung over one shoulder, grinning. Dad, Mom said you got a cool new job. Yeah, kiddo, a really cool one. We spent the afternoon at the Science Museum. Dinosaurs, planets, normalcy. The simple moments that made the fight worthwhile. That night, an unknown number texted. Thank you. You gave me courage to speak up about my situation. A friend. Over the next months, 6 more men reached out. 1 filed a formal complaint against his CEO. 3 left toxic jobs for safer workplaces. All said the same thing. Your story made us realize we aren't alone. I kept working, kept documenting, kept building a life predators couldn't touch. Every morning, driving to my new office, I repeated the same truth. Some battles are worth fighting, especially when the odds seem impossible. The greatest revenge is refusing to stay silent.